So next, I'd like to invite Ron Ogden up from the National Soaring Museum. He's going to tell us the kind of failure no man wants to admit. Ooh, that's a little scary.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to see everybody here for this failure summit, particularly some of the younger folks, because part of the failure that I experienced in my life, I think, is important, and the lessons that I learned are particularly important to younger people looking ahead to their future as citizens and full participants in the public service sector of our society. But following up Rick's discussion about his personal failure, I wanted to relate one of mine that occurred to me as I was listening to Rick. I'm up at the National Soaring Museum on Harris Hill. I'm a glider pilot and a flight instructor, and I teach people to fly, and I fly around a lot for myself. But I actually hold the record on Harris Hill for destroying the most number of gliders at once. One day, I wrecked 2 gliders simultaneously, and all for the sake of a young lady. And let me tell you how that works. There was a group of us at Harris Hill. Harris Hill has a group called the Junior Member Organization, and it's young people from 14 to about 23 who come up to fly and really learn to fly inexpensively. And I took part in that, and one day when I was about 16 to 17, I think, and so was she, the magazine, I forget what, it was a teenage magazine that was called 17, came up to take some pictures of the junior pilots. Well, I was the only one of the group that had passed the solo permission. That is to say, you have a license to fly by yourself without the benefit of an instructor in the back seat. So I thought, well, here was this young lady that I really wanted to know. I thought, I'm going to show off a little bit, and I'm going to go flying. So I jumped in the glider and took off, and everybody was, wow, there he goes, click, 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 click. Took off, flew around for a little while, came back for a landing, not aware of the fact that the wind was blowing slightly sideways. Well, remember, the glider has got wings like this, right? And I came in for a landing, I'm lining up on the runway, and the conditions weren't the best, and I'm kind of working my way down and trying to get down to the point where the airplane would land, wings out like this, and the airplane is slowly moving this way without me noticing it. And lo and behold, there's another glider sitting on the runway just like this. And we met just about like that. I went that way. The other glider went that way. One of the senior members who was just getting into the glider went ass over tea kettle over the wing. Thankfully, he was not injured. And the dust settled, and there I was, having, in front of everybody, including this young lady, wrecked 2 gliders. Now, the side benefit of taking that risk and having that particular failure was that the young lady and I just did 41 years together as of last week. And the lesson is, and this is for all you young men out there, the best way to get to know a pretty young lady is to be absolutely pathetic. She said, I just wanted to put my arms around you. And I said, go ahead. But actually, that isn't the topic I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the failure that no man wants to admit. And obviously, it is a play on words. I think somebody said it had better be a play on words. This is the story about an election, or the night I failed to get an election, not the other word. Or to quote the title of one of my favorite authors' stories, Mark Twain, it's the private history of a campaign that failed. And this event took place about 13 years ago in Pinellas County, Florida, where I was working, and it's both a personal and professional failure, but what I want to leave you with today is 2 important ideas, and they're particularly important for the younger people. And that is the necessity, as has been said before, of taking a risk, and the necessity of doing it again. Because the failure that I have to describe to you today was not so much running for office, not so much failing to get elected, but failing to try again when I got beat. So let me talk a little bit about the election itself. It was for the school board in Pinellas County, a county of about 1 million people, 135,000 kids in the school system, a single unitary school district, 1 school board. I was a political professional at the time. I did an awful lot of community organizing, worked with a lot of political groups. I worked for the Florida State Senate and the staff of the Senate Majority Leader. It was a gas. Let me tell you, no matter what you think about politics, and everybody these days really hates the idea of politics. Politicians are perhaps the most vivid, interesting, stimulating, intelligent, I'm not going to say moral and ethical, but vivid and interesting people that you will ever want to meet. So I decided that I really wanted to take the next step and run for office. In order to do so, under the law, I had to quit my very nice job with the Senate Majority Leader and go out and campaign. I lost substantially. And the reason why, there's many reasons why I lost substantially. But what happened is that for that reason, having lost, and particularly because there were some other reasons that occurred in my life at the time, including my daughter getting rather ill, I decided not to try again. And that was the greatest mistake that I think that I made. And the reason why that is because I, like you, like all of you, I believe, in this room, am committed to public service and the public sector as our career, as the most important thing. Are there anybody here who is a private sector or a for-profit person? Okay, there's one gentleman back there too. I love to talk to people who work in the for-profit sector and tell them how easy their lives are. And they always look at me kind of goggle-eyed and say, how can you possibly say that? And I say, all you guys got to do is make a profit. And making a profit quarter after quarter can cover up an awful lot of sins. But think about the nonprofit sector and the responsibilities that we have. We have the responsibility of trying to provide a product to people who don't have to pay for it, don't want to pay for it, in many cases don't want it at all. And we have to get our money from people who really don't get any particular value out of it. They don't really get a good thing, maybe a good feeling, and it's their mission to go ahead and distribute money like the Community Foundation does, but they don't get anything really great, touchy-feely they can hold on to. They just give money away. And we have to, in the public sector, realize that it is a very, very important challenge that we have. It is so important that we cannot let one failure, no matter how public, and Rick was talking about his failures being public, one failure in front of 100,000 voters so demoralize you that you decide not to try again. I want to leave, when I'm done, the idea in everybody's mind, particularly the young people, that if you're going to be in the public sector, if you're going to make that career, then you are going to depend on one sense or another, to one extent or another, on the government. And nobody wants to be involved, I think, with a major power in your personal career, such as the government, without reaching out and attempting to have some influence over it. And so I want to tell you that the risk that people take to run for office, the risk that they take to expose themselves to criticism at a public level as either candidates or as elected officials, the risk they take for making a mistake while in public office, and the risk they take of being exposed for having made a mistake, seems to be so terribly daunting that none of us really want to participate because we're afraid of what's going to happen. We can't allow ourselves to do that. You know, ladies and gentlemen, that is a risk that I call upon everybody here to be willing to take. I'm not saying that you all have to think about running for office, but I'd like to ask you all to take steps to become involved. To become involved either in a particular political party or a group such as what they characterize as special interest, whatever it may be, but to let your voice be heard as an informed, risk-taking, forward-acting person who is willing to reach out and to tell that his or her friends and neighbors that you are willing to take the responsibility for public participation in a powerful and immediate and necessary way. There are so few people anymore who are unwilling to do this that we are at risk of allowing our political system here in the United States of being taken over by a small group of people who have the power of money but not any real thought about the greater good of the most number of people in a particular community. These folks are professionals. I used to be a political professional, and I made my mistakes, obviously. But the biggest mistake that I made, again, was not in trying, and not in failing, because failure, as we all have said before, happens to everybody. It's failing to try again and again and still again. Because every one of us, you and me, we all have something important to bring to this process, and we all ought to say to ourselves, because I believe in the public good, because I'm willing to do what I have to do to make a difference to people who are in need or who have dreams and desires that we need the community to fulfill, I'm willing to go out and try my absolute best not to be dismayed by the possibility of loss, and to try again. And I see the stop sign there. And so I'll ask if there's any questions about either wrecking gliders or running for office and failing. Anybody at all? Well, I hope that you will really consider it. Think about, what's out there and try for it.